Okay, I'll get cracking. So I'm Jess Loveland. I'm head of new writing with BBC Writersroom and drama commissioning. And I am really delighted to welcome you all to this webinar today, where we're going to be talking all things related to our upcoming open call submission window. We're going to be recording this webinar and we'll make it available later on in case anyone wants to share it with their writer friends or have a quick recap themselves. And we've also just published a helpful application tips blog on the Writersroom site. So please do check that out later today. And maybe one of my Writersroom friends will share the link in the chat because it's very straightforward, but I've forgotten it already. We have some captioning available today, so please access that if you need it. So we've got an hour today. We're going to have quite a bit of ground to cover, so I'll keep my rambling to a minimum. We've got 4 brilliant guests who I'll introduce you to shortly, and we'll leave some time towards the end of the session for a audience Q&A. So please do pop any questions that you have into the designated Q&A box, and we'll get around to answering as many of those as we can in the time that we have. Any questions that we don't get around to, we will round them up and we will post answers and put those up on the blog in the next week or so. We also have the chat enabled, which I can see you're using and already networking with each other in there. So do feel free to connect with one another virtually via the chat. And just a reminder that we're going to be running a Q&A later. So if you've got questions, pop them in the Q&A box that's also enabled. And don't pop them in the chat because we're not monitoring the chat as closely. Put them in the Q&A box. So just a bit of detail around Open Call. It's our new name for the big annual script submission window that we previously referred to as Script Room. We'll be opening the call this year on Thursday, the 9th of December at 12 noon and closing it on Thursday, the 13th of January, also at 12 noon. So this time next week, everybody, it will be live, hopefully. No, definitely. This year will be slightly different as we'll be using the open call as a means of selecting participants for not just our drama room program as we have done in the past, but also for our nationwide Voices writer development groups. So all in all, we hope to be able to select up to 100 writers annually through the open call alone from across the length and breadth of the whole of the UK. And in this way, we hope to create many more open access points to Writersroom support across the whole of the country. So because we are using the open call as a means to select, as I said, up to 100 writers for our Voices and drama room groups, we'll also be asking some questions within the submission process this year. And this is just so we can get a better sense of who you are, what motivates you as a writer, and so that we can design programs of support and development that most meet the needs of our writers. This will really help us in the very final stages of selection when we're placing the writers within specific groups. All scripts, as usual, will be read completely anonymously by the Writersroom team and our team of brilliant and experienced readers. And we'll also ask that you take your names off your scripts as usual so that you can't be identified throughout the reading stages. Reading stations, I like that. We think it's incredibly important that all materials are read anonymously, and this is an integral part of the process and the way that the Writersroom operates and has always operated. We really want your work to just speak for itself. Only the Writersroom team will have access to the answers you submit and will only read these at the very end of the reading process. I'll be creating a little video next week or a blog post to talk through the questions and give pointers about the sorts of things that we would like you to address within your answers. We know that when there is change like this, people will have questions and they'll want to speak to the team about them. So we're going to be running a number of drop-in sessions on Zoom over the course of the next few weeks. We've already posted details of the dates on the blog and how to join. So do take a look at those and feel free to join us for a chat if you would like to at one of those sessions. The first one is going to be on Tuesday, the 7th of December over lunchtime. So just before we open the opportunity. We'll also be using our newly upgraded e-submissions system for the open call this year. So it might look a little different, possibly a little nicer. But the only real material difference for you will be that if you're already registered as a user, you'll be asked to create a new unique password. Anyway, that's enough rambling from me. I would like now to introduce you to our 4 brilliant guests. We have writers Dav James, Emma Dennis-Edwards, and Steph Smith, who are all alumni of Writersroom programs, and we're also joined by the lovely Nigel Hastings, our producer of the Open Call and head of our readers team. So I will run, sorry, you're going to have to listen to me a little bit longer because I'm just going to run through the biogs of our lovely guests. So Steph Smith took part in our drama room program and also our TV drama writers program. She is a multi-award winning writer who's worked extensively in theatre and won 3 Scotsman Fringe First Awards for plays Roadkill, Swallow and Enough. Roadkill also won an Olivier Award, and her play Nora was shortlisted for the 2020 Susan Smith Blackburn Prize. For screen, Steph took part in our drama room program, and her digital drama short pilot Float was released on iPlayer in October 2019 and later commissioned for a full series, which was released on iPlayer in August this year. Steph is currently under commission from a number of theatres and also developing her first feature film whilst working on several projects for TV. Emma Dennis-Edwards, another alumni of our programs, has run through the full range of them pretty much. London Voices in 2018, Drama Room 2020, TV Drama Writers Programme also in 2020. So Emma is a writer, performer of Jamaican and Trinidadian heritage. Emma is writing an episode of Champion, Candice Carty-Williams' new show for BBC. She was part of the BBC Writers Academy with John York and has written episodes of Casualty, Holby and EastEnders. Alongside her episodic writing, Emma is developing original projects with The Forge, Moonage and Balloon. And Dav James, another alumnus, Welsh Voices 2017-18 and TV Drama Writers Programme 2019. Dav is an award-winning writer, composer and performer who works across theatre, radio, TV and film in both English and Welsh language. He won a Total Theatre Award for Music and Theatre for his show My Name is Sue and was described as one of Wales's most exciting playwrights in The Guardian following his most recent play, Tulworth. He currently has 2 TV shows greenlit, one for BBC One produced by Duck Soup, and he's also working on a feature film adaptation of the book On the Red Hill by Mike Parker for BBC Film, also with Duck Soup. And lastly, but by no means least, we have Nigel Hastings, who is our open call producer, oversees the reading process and our brilliant team of freelance readers. Nigel's been working in script and writer development for over 20 years and started out his career in theatre before moving into film and television. Nigel's also a brilliant actor. So I am going to move on to my questions. So I'm going to move my screen around a little bit, and I am going to start with Emma, because you have moved through so many Writers' Room programs. How did progressing from Voices to Drama Room and then to the TV Drama Writers Program impact your development as a writer? And do you feel that that progression helped you to make most of the other schemes as you moved through the ladder?
Yeah, I think it definitely did. I mean, starting on London Voices, I hadn't done any television, so I'd come from theatre, and London Voices was really useful in order to give an introduction to the BBC. So we'd meet different kind of departments every week, whether that's radio, continuing drama, whoever. And so that was really good just to get us like an introduction into kind of what's kind of on offer as a writer. Because yeah, I just didn't know that much. I didn't know there were so many different kind of things that you can do. And then moving into Drama Room, was really great because you work on at the time I was working on a pilot with a script editor, which was really, really useful to kind of get into that process. And then with that script, I then applied to TV Drama Writers Program, and then and then you kind of work with your production company and kind of develop a new idea. So definitely every single program was definitely interconnected for me in my kind of journey.
That's brilliant. And what had you done before? So before you got onto London Voices, what was your sort of writing background?
Yeah, so before that, I was writing theatre, so I'd had a show on at Edinburgh that I'd done quite well, and had like done kind of other writers groups at the Royal Court and the Lyric. So I was kind of writing plays, mainly short plays, hadn't done that many full-length plays, and kind of also writing youth theatre plays as well. So it was like a very good kind of step into doing that, which was really cool.
And was TV and sort of screenwriting something that you were really hoping to move into? Was it sort of a strategic move for you? Yeah.
I was definitely kind of interested, had applied for other kind of writing programs, hadn't got on to other things, and for whatever reason, like when London Voices kind of approached me at the time, they were working with, I think Tallowa, maybe London Voices were kind of working with them, and so my work was kind of known by them, and then they had kind of put me forward for London Voices, but I was definitely feeling a bit like, oh my gosh, how does anyone kind of break into television? So yeah, it was very good to actually like kind of open up that world to me, and like, you know, obviously there's like quite a long journey from me being on London Voices and then, you know, kind of getting a television credit. But it definitely, I was like, okay, so this is how it works. These are how it all works. So that was really useful.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah.
And Steph, you were in Drama Room, were there any sessions in particular that really helped develop your skills and have been useful preparing you for the industry since?
Yeah, I think so. My background's entirely in theatre, and Drama Room was really my first introduction to telewriting. And I think the one that really stood out for me was the one with CBeebies. And I think for me, I had like, particularly because like my work is quite adult and very dark and dramatic, I think I hadn't even considered writing for kids on telly. And so I think I really remember that session that we all went to Manchester and heard the team speak about it. And I think it really felt like I think that's was symbolic of the whole experience of the Drama Room, which was about sort of demystifying what the BBC is and all the different departments, and going, oh yeah, of course, like you need people to write and create for CBeebies. And I think for me that was eye-opening. And I had the same experience with continuing drama. Like I had no idea how people begin to write for continuing drama, and so I think meeting that team and again hearing about how Doctors is different from Casualty and etc., I think was just, it felt like it really sort of drew back the curtains of the BBC, which I found really humbling and also really exciting when you suddenly realise that it is a group of people who all love storytelling and are just trying to find the stories they want to tell in all these different departments.
Absolutely. And they're always looking for new voices and fresh ideas and new takes on existing shows. And it is exciting that Drama Room in particular offers that insight into all those different elements of the BBC, for sure. And it could expose you to things that you maybe would never have thought about previously.
Certainly did. Yeah, I don't have a kid, so I consumed a lot more CBeebies than I'd ever done in my life. So that was interesting.
CBeebies marathon. Yeah. Smashing. And Dav, like one of the things that we always think is so important about our groups and about sort of talent development programs generally is that you're part of a cohort of peers, and hopefully people will stay in touch and move through the industry together. Did that happen for you? Are you still in touch with the cohorts that you were in? And did you gain anything from that sort of contact?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, with Welsh Voices, because it's such a small writing community in Cardiff anyway, and in Wales, you know, I knew quite a lot of people going into that. We were the first group, I think, actually. And it was amazing because we had this monthly meeting of people that we weren't actually having anyway. I used to see a lot of them around because we'd go and watch each other's shows and support each other through that. But just to have this structured, this structure in which we could meet and learn together and develop was brilliant. I mean, as I said, they're colleagues of mine, so I've collaborated with them in theatre since then as well. You also gain, you gain readers. That's another brilliant thing. When you find your trusted people, you can send your scripts to them and you can get feedback because you trust them. But the other thing I think that's really important that you gain from them is better mental health, because it's a lonely old business, this writing thing, and you can go quite mad, not just because you've got millions of voices in your head as you try and write, but because you're also negotiating or waiting for answers, and Writersroom waiting for answers as the people listening. You're trying for schemes, and it's really tough, and it's a very vulnerable place to be in, because you're not just bearing your soul in your work, but you're putting your neck on the line vulnerably, waiting for decisions to be made. So to have people that you can wrestle through your own kind of demons with can be really, really useful. And talk through things that are making you anxious or worried, as well as the creative support that you can get with the work. And then also in the TV dramas writers program, we've got a WhatsApp group still. So what's really nice about that is, often people will, I'm not on social media very often, but people will send a message celebrating someone else's success and say, oh, guess what, guys, so and so has just got this on, or this show is going on, or and then we can all do a kind of a social yay for everybody. So kind of support and enable people that way.
That's lovely. That's what it's all about, isn't it? I think is like everybody lifting everybody else up is really, really important. So collectively, you all started out predominantly in theatre. So how different did you find the process of writing, generating ideas for plays versus TV ideas? Was it hard to make that transition? I don't know who wants to take that first. Has anybody got? Steph, I think you've possibly done a lot of theatre before.
Yeah, I think telly just needs more plot than theatre. I think that was a big shock to me. I was like, God, I need so much more story and plot in telly. And so that was a big eye-opener for me, coming from such a sort of theatrical background, and a real gear shift for me, and having to think about generating story differently as well. I think that was a big lesson that I took away from Drama Room. It was a step for me. I don't know if you guys agree.
Oh, totally. I mean, it took me years to develop my TV writing voice, actually, just because I'd started off in theatre, and actually realizing in a way, because I think theatre is much more a philosophical medium in a sense, and the structure of that embodies the philosophy of your plays. And so, and it can be freewheeling. It can last for 3 hours if you want it to, whereas TV has a limited, BBC, you might have an hour, or you might have a commercial hour. So there's a maths to that, the storytelling, in terms of when you're going to hit certain things. That's different to theatre. So to find my play, as it were, and joy in writing within the limits of that structure, and to realize that actually it can be quite liberating as well. But it did take me a really long time. I mean, I've been trying to write for telly for a decade now. These things do take time, and I think that's really important to tell everyone. To learn your craft takes a really long time.
Yeah, I think that's really true, and actually finding your voice, because I felt like quite confident in what my voice was in theatre, and like people would not kind of know what to expect from a play of mine, like to an extent. And then you get into telly, and it's a little bit different, but like being freed within a structure, I think, has been really useful. And I know as part of Drama Room, and I don't think we did as London Voices, but a Drama Room, they had, you know, like John York, who also did the academy that I did, and he does a session on structure, which I found really, really useful to think about, and also his book as well, which is really just useful way to kind of tell those stories in a kind of screen way. But yeah, you kind of like learn the structure throughout like working in this, and then you just throw it away and write what you want anyway. But it's useful to know.
You have to know it, don't you, to be able to, you have to know the roles to break them. Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of opportunities that have opened up, have there been many opportunities for you since you left the groups? Has it created opportunity for you, or?
Oh, absolutely. So like writing on continuing drama wasn't something I'd ever considered until somebody came in from continuing drama on our kind of on London Voices, and I remember like saying to my agent, like, oh, that looks interesting, like, oh, you write script and then it's on telly in 6 months, because, you know, it takes quite a long time outside of continuing drama to get something from script to on the telly. And I remember being like, oh, how do we do that, and then kind of working that out, and then applying for the academy, and then eventually getting onto that. So I think it definitely opened up. Like I would never have, I definitely didn't like think about it at all. So I was like, I write really slow. It takes me quite a long time to write anything. How would I ever like kind of do it? But it's really nice.
Yeah, definitely. Float, my series that's on iPlayer at the moment, that was sort of made in conjunction with me being in the drama room and being invited onto another scheme through the Writers Room in Scotland. And certainly I find the Writers Room in general has been an amazing resource for me, coming from theatre into screen. And I think without that experience, I don't think Float would have been made, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Actually, like directly from Voices, with Welsh Voices, they put us on placements with Children in Need funded projects. So I spent an amazing time working in a needle exchange and this centre called Roots, which look after or enable people who've young carers to leave that and go onto their own paths. And then so I was commissioned to write a short film for the Children in Need, the Children in Need show, which was a kind of a music video where I combined spoken word and music. And then also from the TV dramas writers program. I mean, one of the main things I got that was meeting Duck Soup, who, for anyone out there, they're an extraordinary independent. They're just an amazing company, and I felt like I'd met my own people. Nobody really told me at the beginning that in generals, generals is a bit like, when you meet with different companies, it's a bit like being a bit promiscuous with loads of people coming in. And nobody told me that I didn't need to put out on every date. Do you know what I mean? So I was there, just sending them all these pictures that I didn't really care about, for people who I wasn't really into. And I probably spent 10 years doing that. And then Duck Soup, I finally went, I had to just find my people. So that's a really important thing, to find your people who are going to enable you to write the best script that you can, and from that, actually, that the green light that I've got has actually come directly from the script that I was developing through the TV Dramas Writers Program. So they
love you so much. I met Duck Soup, and like they spoke about you. They love you so much, Dan. So.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Emma. Yeah,
I was very excited about your script. Like they were kind of telling me, I was like, oh, that sounds cool.
Oh, that's very kind. It's a mutual feeling. They're really great people. So it's just advice, really, just to hold out, to meet the people that you just like and enjoy, and you can laugh with and be vulnerable with as well, actually.
And also not London based, I think, was also really important to say about Duck Soup, and like in terms of the programs that I've been on, like not everybody, London Voices obviously, but other than that, like Drama Room, there's people from all over. When I did TV Dramas Writers Program, there's people from all over. So I think one of the things that I really appreciate about like the BBC Writers Room, that ultimately wherever you are located, like there's a way to make it work. And I feel like that's really, really important, that we have different voices. I think it's amazing that a company from like Leeds have got all of these like brilliant like commissions and green lights. I'm like, I think it's really important.
Yeah. And Daff, I think you mentioned something really interesting there about trusting your own taste as well. It's like you don't have to just go with the mainstream. You can find you know, figure out the stories you want to tell and the people who can help you tell them the way that you want them to be told. I think that's, yeah, takes a while, I think, sometimes. Just trust your taste.
It really does, to have the courage and the confidence to believe in actually what, it's really hard to remain true to your inner voice, I think, and to not be distracted by the noise of the industry that's out there, you know, and the competition and all these people and social media. That's why I actually don't look, I mean, it's brilliant because it can give you so many opportunities in itself, but I personally, and everyone's different, but I've had to switch off from that because I needed to stick on my own path and my own authenticity and be able to tune into that inner voice and to not doubt actually what I have to say and the way that I want to say it might not be what most of the industry is telling you at the time. So I think that's, yeah, I think that's really important stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you. And just one final question from you all. Do you have any tips on how the writers in the audience today might try and stand out amongst the many submissions that will come through the open call this time?
Oh, I know it's really like, when people say this to me, I'm like, what does that mean? But it is really about, like, I think submitting the piece of work that is the closest to your voice and wherever you're at now, I think is the big one, like your own unique perspective and voice, and not trying to write something that not trying to second guess what people are going to read and connect with. I think that is it. But whenever people say that, I'm like, people are like, what does that mean? What is my own voice? But I really think that's the important thing.
Yeah. And I think don't write trying to stand out, because I think then you'll sort of do the opposite. Again, it just comes back to finding the story you want to tell and how you want to tell it. And I think that will hopefully, I'd like to trust that will shine through.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I think that's so right. And also, you know, keep trying. Look, I tried 3 times or more for various different BBC schemes and was getting rejected, and it can be really tough. You need some resilience in that, and you've got to trust that sometimes it's not your time, maybe, or something hasn't quite matched with it doesn't mean that your work isn't great. It doesn't mean that actually it won't get made in the end. You know, there's a kind of resilience that has to come with that. You know, and I'd also say, and I know it's a cliche, but it links to your own authored voice, but it's that thing about writing what you know. And sometimes people might think that what they know is boring, but actually you're so unique. No one else has lived life in the order that you have, or had the events that happen to you in the order that you have. You know, your own protagonist in your story. And to bring that life experience into your work is the thing that will give that voice its unique perspective. And you know, and also I think it is useful to the resource on the Writersroom, the scripts on there is such an amazing resource. You know, I did read a lot of Russell T Davies scripts and Sally Wainwright scripts, and really learn how, oh my God, my stage directions are really dull, actually. And actually, you want to give the experience in the script to the reader that they would experience watching the show. You know, it should be thrilling and dynamic and exciting. So to bring that kind of, that character into the writing is another way to help those scripts forward, I think.
There's a lot of great advice in there. Thank you. Thanks, all 3 of you, for that. That's terrific. I'm going to move on to Nigel, just to sort of unpack the reading process a bit more and have a chat about that. So
can I just interrupt for a minute? Thanks, guys. That was so much more interesting than anything I'm going to say. So please feel free to join in if you disagree, especially, but if there's something you want to add, because that was just fantastic. Well, I could retire now and just go, I'll hand over to you. Oh, except I've got to do the admin. That's quite dull. Does anyone want to do that bit? No, that was seriously, it was fantastic, really fantastic. And so much of like the notes I've got, you've actually already covered them. So thanks.
You've done Nigel's job for him, though.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. I'll go and do the garden.
So we get several thousand submissions a year through the open call window, and the readers read through various different stages, and Nigel oversees all of this. So the first stage is the 10-page read. What are you looking for in that, Nigel? Like what elements are you looking for that stand out?
Well, the kind of basic thing is there's three things. You have to introduce your world, introduce the characters who live in that world, and set them up, or a dilemma or a goal to reach. That's your kind of absolute basic. The ones that stand out are the ones that show us a slightly different world, or a different angle on a world, or something we haven't really thought of before, or not seen before on the telly, or characters or angles on characters that we've not seen before. Those are the ones that really stand out, along with doing those three kind of basic storytelling elements that you have to include. My big to, like Daph said, go to the Writersroom online library. One of my favorite beginnings, everyone will have a favorite beginning, but I think Killing Eve, series 1, episode 1, the first 6 minutes of that do everything really, really well. On different events like this, I've sort of analysed it and shown it, but we don't have time for that. But go and have a look. It's also on iPlayer, and see the little story beats and the way those characters, the two worlds are set up, and the way the problem is introduced. They're in funny and really unusual ways. That's all I'll say. I think have a look at that, because that does the job.
That's brilliant. And it's true, isn't it, that when we watch new series now, people are quite brutal, aren't they? On Netflix, people do literally watch like the first 5 minutes, sometimes not even 10 minutes of a show.
100%. So you do have to hook them, but it's not about explosions or teasers. Teasers are getting a bit overdone now, I think. You know, the kind of image of a person waking up naked in a wood, not knowing how they got there, and then flashing back to 6 months previously is kind of, you know, you can do it, but it doesn't have to be big. It can be something very small and specific. It's like Villanelle, which we find out later she's an assassin, but she tips the ice cream over the child. And that was just such a amusing little attention grabbing moment, because what you want to do is make us as readers want to read on. And actually everyone writes notes, why a script is being progressed or not. And one of the big notes, they say, this was really interesting, I wanted to read on. And what is interesting, it then goes to another reader. And then in the meetings we have throughout the process, a script might come up and say, oh, I read that, what happened? Because that's the real hook, isn't it?
That's brilliant. Yes, just get to page 11, isn't it? Get the reader to read on to page 11 in the first instance.
Yes.
And then thinking about scripts overall, is there anything that, you know, what are you looking for in a standout script?
Oh, it's all.
I know that's so hard. Sorry,
it's
Nigel.
the most difficult question. I think the writer, our lovely writers here, actually covered it. It's a unique personal angle, by which we mean voice, which I think we'll come on to in a minute. But it's voice. It's your personal take on the world. It's memorable characters, distinct, specific, memorable characters make brilliant stories. If you think of all the really, great characters in Time, Years and Years, It's a Sin, Dr. Foster, Line of Duty, all different worlds, all different characters. The smaller ones like In My Skin, tiny. It's the characters who make stories. Characters needing things, us championing them, make us want to watch on, and therefore make us want to read on in the script stage. Flawed, complex characters, warm, funny, engaging, flawed like Succession, and their relationships that come out of that. Speaking of Succession, I mean, what extraordinary relationships they have. The stories that come out, that are generated from that. I think Daph was saying it's really difficult to generate stories. Was it? But the stories of the characters, they come out of the characters' wants, don't they? So if a character has and it doesn't matter how tiny that want is, but if the character has a specific want, then the story will generate from that, and the structure will generate from that, because structure essentially, John York will shoot me for saying this, but structure is essentially what characters want, and the obstacles are in the way. And how you arrange that is kind of up to you, I think. Oh, Emma's nodding, thank you. I think relevance, topical relevance really counts. It really makes your script stand out. And that doesn't mean it has to be contemporary. If you think Bridgerton, which was I loved, I didn't at first, my daughter made me watch it, but it's about social media. So even though it's sort of set in this sort of fantasy period world, another thing I've been enjoying recently, I think I would, is Ridley Road, because even though it's set in the 60s and has that very period drama feel, it's about contemporary issues. It's about the rise of the far right. It's about racial prejudice. And so it has a real echo. So it doesn't, so that sort of relevance, and it doesn't have to be big relevance. It can be, you know, literally how we live today. I was interested in Dav saying about going to the needle exchange and stuff. That must have generated a lot of interesting ideas. One, reflecting how in the UK today and Ireland, and what really personally interests me is kind of little corners of it could be a tiny corner of Deptford or a corner of Bradford or something that I haven't seen before. Years ago, there was a script I read. It was set. It was a stage script, and it was purely set in a mechanics workshop in a part of Bradford, and that's all it was. And it was fascinating because it was a world we don't have insight to in the mainstream. I think one of my favorite scripts from last time was set on a metro in Newcastle, and there was a couple of teenagers chatting, but it was the relationship between them and their history and what each was trying to get from each other was so tense that it didn't actually matter that it wasn't this kind of massive, not that you can't have massive worlds, but you know, tiny, even if it is a massive world, it has to be tiny and specific and authentic. Is that enough?
That's brilliant. That's plenty. Yes, that's a lot for people to be thinking on, isn't it? Yeah, that's all gold. And yeah, just that question, the hardest question I think of all about voice, and I think it was interesting what Dav was saying there about, you know, really having to work hard to translate voice for TV and taking the time to really find what that is. How do you identify that on the page?
Yeah, well, Dav, I want to, can you come to one of the drop-in sessions and we'll chat about that, please? That would be fantastic. Identifying on the page, it kind of springs out at you, really. So voice is one of those things that goes, people go round and round in circles trying to define. For me, your writing voice, and it kind of came out in what Steph, Emma and Daph were saying. For me, there's no real difference between your speaking and your writing voice, because your speaking voice is instantly recognizable to people who know you. It usually comes from the heart, and you use it to express your take on the world. And whether that's global warming or some nasty person who Q-barged in Morrison's, it's kind of, you know, it's about you and your voice. And it's really difficult to do because, as Dav said, you have to bare your soul. Your writing voice should be no different to that. It should be your take in the world expressed in your way, in your personal way. And that comes through, that authenticity and that angle, because all of us are completely unique. So that unique take will come through. I mean, the thing, if you think about the difference between, say, Shane Meadows and his polar opposite, Richard Curtis, two very, very distinct but different voices. And that's kind of how so it's not up to us to identify them. They spring out, I think, when it feels personal, when it feels authentic, when it feels specific. I think.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nigel. Yeah. And just aware of time, so can you give us your top tips?
No, I'm speaking very fast. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're doing great. Can you tell us your top tips for writers who are thinking about
tips?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a basic do's and don'ts, which is on the link that Phil's done for everyone. So that's kind of fairly straightforward. I've put that out there before, and that's just about kind of, nuts and bolts. I think it's what Daff, Steph, and Emma were saying. Don't think you have to write what you think we want to see as the BBC, because the BBC doesn't really exist. It's loads and loads of little kingdoms. It's like Game of Thrones or something. Actually, it's not quite like that. But no, it's loads of different departments. There's no BBC in inverted commas, however much it might seem like that. If you, write from the heart. Write what you want to say about the world. This is the first time, or maybe the last time, you have no constraints. You don't have a script editor breathing down your neck. There's no genre, there's no timing that needs to, this was touched on earlier. There's no market, there's no target audience, there's no producer saying, no, we don't want it like that, we wanted it like this. You can write exactly what you want. And so do that, because that's what springs out, I think. One of the things I always think And the readers' meetings, I remind us all of this, that no one knows anything. It's the William Goldman thing. We can only guess. And the Queen's Gambit took Alan Scott 30 years to make and ended up with over 60 million viewers. So that absolutely proves that no one knows anything. We're in a brilliant time for writers, actually, because there's so much product is required. Producers and networks and independents are crying out for it. So yeah, right from the heart.
Thanks, Nigel. I think what we'll do now is we've got lots of questions coming in actually from people in the audience, so we might jump into those now if that's okay with.
Yeah, I think you should. I'm talking about voice on board of my own.
So we have a question here for open call submissions. Do you have any advice for new writers and those without any writing credits on what to include in a CV? Well, I'm going to actually probably write a blog or a little video blog about that later this week or next, because I think thinking about it in terms of a CV is possibly not really what we want. We don't just sort of want a list of, everything that everybody's ever written. So what we want is more of your writing history, how you came to writing. You don't have to have a ton of theatre productions under your belt. You don't have to have made, you don't have to have any credits really. We're looking for original, exciting, surprising new voices. And what we want to know is why you love writing really, rather than a list of productions or credits or anything like that. So if you don't have anything like that, that doesn't act in any way against you. We just want to know how long you've been writing, what you've been writing, how you got into it. Did you love writing in school? Have you been writing for sort of community groups? Are you part of a writers meetup in your hometown, in your community? That's the sort of thing that we want to know, and that's what we're interested in, is how you came to writing and your motivation to keep writing and evolving and developing your craft. But I'll release a little bit more information about that next week and go into that in a bit more detail. We've got one here about working across both London and Berlin, making work in both cities, but more often in Berlin. Are they eligible to apply? You need to be resident in the UK or the Republic of Ireland, really, and we need people really to be resident here for sort of the next 18 months as well, so that they can go through the process of the groups if they are selected. So you do need to be resident within the country. How much of the open call is available to writers in the Republic of Ireland? So you can absolutely, if you're based in the Republic of Ireland, please do send a script in to us if you would like to. I was trying to see. Somebody here is saying that as a disabled person, writing has been their form of escapism. What support can be found for people like me? So as a disabled person, we would love to read your script. So please do send your work in through the open call. We are also going to be reopening our Writers Access group next year in 2022. So please do apply to that. Once we have more details, we'll be sharing that on the blog and on social media. So please do get involved with that.
Can I just add that on both Casualty and EastEnders, there were writers who had come through those access groups as well. So there's definitely a kind of pathway. And like Jess was saying, I'd really encourage you to kind of apply for those.
Yeah. Definitely, yes. And there'll be more opportunities coming up in the new year. I'm just manically trying to read through these so that I can summarize them succinctly. Somebody here asking about if there's a commitment from Writersroom or a desire to get people with little or no experience. And I think, yes, definitely. That's why we read everything blind, we read everything completely anonymously, is that we want to discover new voices. We want to find people who haven't engaged with us before and are new to writing for TV and the screen. So please do submit. We really want to read your scripts. Check out all the eligibility criteria on the website. And if people want to come and talk more about any of these things, then we do have our drop-in sessions, which are kicking off next week, and we can talk through these in a bit more detail. So somebody here, and maybe this is one for the writers, saying that they keep on hearing from people who read their scripts, they're writing multiple scripts at the minute, that directions get in the way. What do you think of this? How detailed should you go with your scene directions?
I mean, I've got something to say, because, well, the thing is, there's a lot of myths, and people will say different things. Again, people will say different things. And actually, at the end of the day, I think it's up to you to kind of find the way that you want to write your script. And you know, if the feedback isn't necessarily helping you, that doesn't mean that the feedback is always right, which is really hard to know when it is and when it isn't. But again, I would say read some scripts and see how they do it. One of the biggest things that I learned is it took me ages to realize that the show don't tell rule didn't necessarily apply to the stage directions in terms of the interior world of the characters.
Yeah.
So I used to be really perfunctory in terms of my stage directions, just like so-and-so looks here, or, you know, just a bit boring. Was actually now my stage directions, and as I said, I was quite influenced in reading Russell T Davies's scripts in this. You know, if you read the way that he writes his stage directions, they're so exciting, and you know that it's like a piece of music, of rhythm, and you know what's going on for those characters. So it's not just so-and-so's looking over here, but what does that look mean and signify, so that as a reader, you can know exactly as a blueprint what this show is trying, is wanting to put on screen. So yeah. I don't know if that's useful, but
yeah, I think I remember it was Barry Jenkins who was talking about this, and like his kind of, if you ever read any of his scripts, like they're very much like you said, very musical and very like operate in that way, but I think there is like quite a British kind of sensibility of like not doing too much of that, but I think because I'm also an actor, I think it's really, really useful for me as an actor to kind of, when I see a script, to really understand what is going on in that person's mind. And I always kind of very much see the script as a map, as opposed to a Bible. So I think if you kind of look at your stage directions as a map of how the thing should look, I think that's really how I kind of approach stage directions now. Map, not Bible. Map, not Bible.
Good. But keep them concise, guys. Do be concise. Don't over describe. There's nothing worse than kind of a really dense block of stage directions to kind of, especially when you're reading massive volume, and they're probably not necessary. They'll be quite. Daff, you look like you're frowning. Do you think?
No, I'm not. That's just the way my face rests.
I think Daff's advice is absolutely brilliant. Think about a TV program you've enjoyed recently. Look it up. It'll probably be in the library, the Writersroom library, and then see how that has been written. That would really help, I think.
Thank you. Maybe one here for you, Nigel.
Okay.
Is there a particular preference between TV scripts, features, and theatre? As I understand, you accept all of them. Do you find that one does particularly better than others during the reading stages?
Not at all. Not at all. And there's a whole mixed bag of different ones. And I think it's the bottom line is, whichever medium or form you decide to write in, it should reflect the content. So it should be, so a monologue. Obviously, a monologue is going to work much, much better if it's a stage play than if it was a TV script. So yeah, no, right. Once again, it's your choice. It's your personal voice. It's your take on the world. Write what you want to write, not what you think we want to receive. Because there's no secret formula. It's not an exact science. There's no kind of magic wand that it means you'll get through the rounds. It's just, it's that very thing we keep talking about. Your personal voice, your take on the world sticks out.
Absolutely. We've got a Welsh writer here, Dav. Luke Palmer is asking, what's a good place to begin in Wales to start building connections as a writer?
I mean, if you're interested in theatre, for example, to start off, which is it's a great way to start off if that's what you're interested in. You know, somewhere like the Sherman, they have new writing groups in Cardiff. Clwyd up in North Wales will support new writers as well. It's about looking for the kind of which theatres exist and if they have writing programs, and there's quite a few that do that. And then also, you know, in terms of TV, I would certainly say, you know, here the Writers' Room as a way into TV, it's you know, it's not the only way, of course, but it's obviously it's worked for us three. Trying to make connections there with the Writers' Room Wales is a really good thing. That's what I did, and it was really instrumental in developing me as a TV writer.
Brilliant. Billy Dean Owen is asking, are there any particular pet peeves when reading that first page? So maybe, is there anything, Nigel, that you come across often? And for the writers, is there anything that you try and, how agonizing is that first page to write when you're approaching?
It's probably best not to do an alarm clock to wake you up. That happens a lot. It's not a pet peeve, and it's not enough to put you off, but you kind of, we know people get up in the morning. So, you know, meeting the characters in a different way, I think, is usually very good. My other pet hate is in kind of detective stories, when the main detective arrives and goes, so what have we got? I mean, I'm sure policemen say something else. They must do. Do you know what I mean? So that's my two, but they're not, I mean, they're not enough to put you off. They're just, you just kind of think, oh, guys, come on. There's much more. There's something more imaginative you can do. You can try a little bit harder. You can push yourself a bit more, I guess.
Yeah.
Guys, you know.
And I think from the writers, and I think when you're approaching that first page, is do you sort of dropping people straight into the action?
I think opening with like a strong central image that will be key to the rest of the episode is really good. So you're setting them off on a particular sort of racetrack, and something eye-catching and unusual is useful.
That's good.
Great. And we've got a question here, Nigel, about the script readers and who they are and their backgrounds. Could you tell us a bit about the freelance team?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I must say is they are not entry level. None of them have ever been entry level. It's always been a writer's room policy. I know other organizations see it as that. We really, really do not. We want very experienced people. It is a very experienced and diverse mix. They're writers themselves, some of whom have been through the various schemes. They're producers, they're story producers, they're script editors. There's a former BBC radio producer who now teaches writing at one of the universities. They have to stay anonymous, of course. I'm not going to name them. There's a couple of theatre directors, because we get a lot of stage plays, of course. There's a dramaturg. We've got a university lecturer with a PhD in film who teaches at one of the West Country universities. They all have professionally produced credits on TV, radio, film, and stuff being on at the National Theatre and the RSC. They are quite an intimidating crowd. So when I chair the meetings, I always feel a little bit, I've got to be sharp and on my best, because they're not stupid at all. And one of the reasons they stay, and a lot of them have stayed a long time, is because they find it very interesting. They like to discover these new writers, discover new ideas and look around like that, and see what's going on. It informs their own work. And so there's a reader who's just left, actually, because she's suddenly become too busy working with Idris Elba. But she said her 5 years on the reading team shaped her own writing, because she, really discovered what works, what doesn't work. So they're very invested and they really care, and they're not paid very much. So there's their warmth and investment is second to none. I think they're an extraordinary bunch.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nigel. We've got somebody here asking about short films. So they make a lot of short films to hone their skills. But they've noticed everybody's here today has a theatre background. So they're wondering whether a theatre is a better way into TV nowadays. I think there's multiple different ways to get into TV, and I think writing short film scripts is a really interesting way in, and it really strengthens your dramatic writing. And like I've worked a long time with filmmakers making shorts and exec producing lots of shorts, and we do see a lot of those writers crossing over into TV. So no, if that's the form that you enjoy writing, and you're honing your craft that way, then keep doing that. Got somebody here asking about why we're asking for a CV and whether that could potentially promote unconscious bias if it's used in any part of the selection and judging process. So as I said, it's not technically a CV. We want to know more about how you came to writing, why you're passionate about writing, how you first started out as a writer, and your motivation for writing. So it's more about that than it is a CV. It's more of a writing history, and it won't be used in the judging process. So we will be using it primarily to understand a bit more about people's motivations for applying and wanting to take part in our programs. And also it will help us, we ask questions there, we're going to ask questions as well about what you would like to see on the programs. So it will help us to shape the programs so that they're as useful as possible to the writers that we're working with, so that we can make them slightly more bespoke and targeted.
Can I jump in there as well?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to know the readers will not see that. The readers only see the scripts that have been sent in totally anonymously, and so every new reader has to do an unconscious bias course as well. So we really try and keep as level a playing field as possible, and each script as it progresses through is read by someone different, and quite often read by me or someone else as well at that stage. So for example, if a reader goes, I just don't get this is just not my sort of thing, I will have a look at it, or I'll assign it to another reader who I think might be more appropriate, or we'll both read it. There's a lot of checks and balances in place.
Yeah, it's a really robust process, and it's been in place for a while, and it's very rigorous, and we adjust it all the time as well. So yes, we're very mindful of that, and we won't, as Nigel said, we will only be looking at the questions and the writing history at the once we're placing people into different groups. So once that very final selection is being made, what we want to see are brilliant, surprising original scripts. So please send them all to us. I'm being told that this is time, we're at the end of our hour, and it's flown by, and we've got loads and loads of questions that we weren't able to get to. I'm really sorry about that. But what we will do is we will wrap them up, and we will answer them in a blog post. We might not answer them all individually, because I can see that lots of them thematically are very similar. So we'll try and wrap some of those themes together and give you answers. We also have the drop-in sessions, with the first one starting next week. Check that out on the website, and good luck. Send us all your scripts. We can't wait to start reading them. Can't believe that we're here at this time of the year already. So thank you. And thanks very much to our brilliant guests, to Emma, Dav, Steph and Nigel. Thank you for joining us, and good luck. Have a great day.